Henry Gallagher sat in the air-conditioned conference room of ironclad manufacturing, the smell of stale coffee and unearned victory lingering in the air. At 46, he had spent the last 5 years of his life building the regional operations division from a struggling outpost into the most profitable sector of the company. He had sacrificed weekends, missed his daughter Lily's school plays, and poured his soul into mastering the labyrinthine logistics of industrial supply chains. The promise had always been clear. The regional director position was his. Richard Vance, the company's 52-year-old vice president, had practically guaranteed it. Yet here Henry sat, clapping politely as Richard stood at the head of the table, beaming with paternal pride. Next to him was his 23-year-old daughter, Chloe Vance. She was freshly graduated with a business degree, possessing zero real-world experience, and had only been at the company for 3 months. She was now the new regional operations director. "Chloe is going to do great things for this company," Richard announced, his voice booming with forced enthusiasm. "She brings a fresh perspective, and of course Henry here has been invaluable in getting her up to speed." Henry nodded, keeping his expression neutral. He had spent the last 3 months training her, believing the lie that she was just an eager new hire learning the ropes. Instead, he had been digging his own professional grave, handing over 5 years of meticulously documented processes, vendor relationships, and operational strategies to the boss's daughter. The meeting adjourned, and the room erupted into congratulatory murmurs. Henry gathered his files, his movements slow and deliberate. A strange clarity washed over him. The anxiety and exhaustion that had plagued him for months vanished, replaced by a cold, hard realization. He didn't have to take this. As the room cleared, Richard caught his arm. "Henry, stick around for a second." They stood alone in the quiet conference room. Richard loosened his tie, attempting to look sympathetic. "I know this might sting a bit, but you understand, right? It's not personal. The board wants fresh ideas, new energy. You're incredibly valuable to us, Henry. We need your stability. We need you to keep supporting Chloe." "Valuable enough to train her, but not valuable enough to promote," Henry said, his voice deadly calm. Richard's sympathetic facade slipped, revealing a flash of irritation. "Let's be real, Henry. You have alimony payments. You have Lily to think about. You need this job. It pays well. Just fall in line, do your work, and everything will be fine." He had said the quiet part out loud. Richard believed he had Henry trapped. He thought financial obligations and age made Henry a docile, compliant workhorse. He was about to find out how wrong he was. Henry walked back to his desk, the office humming with the usual chaotic energy. Phones rang, keyboards clacked, and problems arose that only he knew how to solve. He sat down, opened his laptop, and began typing. It wasn't a quarterly report or a vendor negotiation strategy. It was a resignation letter. He didn't make a scene. He waited until precisely 4:30 on Friday afternoon, right after Richard had finished parading Chloe around the warehouse. Henry walked into Richard's office, the resignation letter sealed in a crisp white envelope, and handed it over. "This is my 2 weeks' notice," Henry said. Richard tore open the envelope, his eyes scanning the brief sentences. The color drained from his face, replaced by a mottled, angry red. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No, Richard, I'm resigning. You're quitting because you didn't get the promotion? That's childish, Henry. Unprofessional. I'm resigning because my career path here is clearly blocked, and my expertise is being undervalued." Richard stood up, leaning over his desk. "You walk out now, and I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I will tank your references. You think anyone wants a guy who throws a tantrum when he doesn't get his way?" "I've given you 5 years of flawless performance," Henry replied, unflinching. "I built this division. I'll train Chloe for the next 2 weeks, but after that I'm done." "Fine," Richard barked, 2 weeks, but don't expect any favors from me." Monday morning arrived with a vengeance. Henry walked into the office to find Chloe sitting at her desk, surrounded by stacks of files and 3 computer monitors flashing with urgent emails. She looked pale and terrified. "Henry, thank God," she gasped. "I don't understand this at all. Jennifer Reynolds from Apex Industrial Supply just called. She's screaming about delayed titanium brackets, and she's threatening to cancel our contract if it isn't fixed by noon." Apex Industrial Supply was their largest client. Henry had managed the account personally. building a relationship based on trust and flawless execution. They required just-in-time delivery for heavy machinery components. A delay of a few hours could shut down their entire production line. Henry pulled up a chair. He didn't refuse to help. That wasn't his style. He spent the next 3 hours walking Chloe through the intricate web of backup suppliers, logistical workarounds, and contract stipulations. He showed her how to reroute the shipment to meet the deadline. "This is so complicated," Chloe whispered, staring at the screen. "How did you even know to check the secondary vendor in Tucson?" "Experience," Henry said simply. That afternoon, Henry took a long lunch and started making phone calls. Word traveled fast in the industrial logistics sector. By Tuesday, he had 3 interviews lined up. The most promising was with Stephen Wallace, the regional manager for Ironclad's main competitor, Titan Logistics. Stephen had been trying to poach Henry for 2 years. During the interview, Stephen slid a contract across the table. Regional Operations Director. The salary is $85,000, a 30% bump from what Ironclad was paying you. We want your expertise, Henry. And frankly, we want the clients who trust you. There was no non-compete clause in Henry's contract with Ironclad. It was standard industry practice for clients to follow account managers they trusted. Henry signed the offer letter. The real game was just beginning. Back at Ironclad, the reality of Henry's impending departure was setting in. Chloe was drowning. The technical demands of the job were far beyond her business school theories. She didn't understand the intricacies of the supply chain, the nuances of vendor negotiations, or the critical importance of compliance with the Warren Act regarding their warehouse staffing. Richard, realizing the catastrophe unfolding, tried to backtrack. He called Henry into his office on Thursday. "Okay, Henry, let's be reasonable," Richard said, his tone placating. "What if we make you associate director? You keep your current salary, handle all the technical operations, and Chloe focuses on strategic vision. You'd essentially be co-directors. So I do the actual work, she gets the credit, and you don't have to admit you made a mistake." Henry shook his head. "I'm declining the offer. My last day is tomorrow." Richard's face contorted with rage. "I heard you're interviewing with Titan Logistics. You're trying to steal our clients." "The clients belong to whoever provides the best service," Henry countered. "And right now, this division is a sinking ship." "I'll sue you for breach of fiduciary duty," Richard yelled. "I'll bury you in legal fees." "Good luck with that," Henry said, turning his back and walking out. Friday was Henry's final day. He left comprehensive documentation for Chloe. He didn't want to sabotage her, he simply wanted to leave. As he handed in his security badge, he felt a profound sense of liberation. He had survived the betrayal, and he was walking away stronger. But the consequences of Richard's nepotism were only just beginning to unfold. Monday morning brought chaos to Ironclad Manufacturing, just as Henry had predicted. Chloe Vance arrived early, hoping to get ahead of the insurmountable workload, but she was already hours behind. Her desk was a fortress of unread vendor emails, urgent logistic requests, and legal compliance documents she didn't know how to file. The primary crisis of the day involved their second-largest client, Copperfield Manufacturing, who had sent 3 frantic emails about a missing shipment of industrial-grade bearings. "Where is the routing number for the Copperfield shipment?" Chloe muttered, frantically clicking through the proprietary software Henry had spent years customizing. The software, while efficient, was built on an older architecture that required a deep understanding of the underlying logistics network. It wasn't intuitive for someone whose only experience was reading case studies in a comfortable university library. Richard walked in, holding a cup of premium coffee. "How's it going, Chloe?" "Everything under control." Chloe looked up, her eyes wide with panic. "Dad, I can't find the routing numbers. And there's an alert flashing about a Warren Act compliance issue at the Nevada warehouse." "What does that mean?" Richard waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about the Warren Act right now. Just focus on Copperfield. Call the warehouse manager and tell him to expedite the shipment." "I tried," Chloe said, her voice shaking slightly. "The warehouse manager said we can't expedite because the secondary vendor in Phoenix hasn't released the inventory. And I don't know who the contact person is in Phoenix." Richard frowned. "Henry should have left a contact list." "He did," Chloe replied, pulling up a massive spreadsheet. But there are 40 different vendors in Phoenix, and I don't know which one supplies the specific bearings Copperfield needs. The part numbers in our system don't match the vendor catalog. This was the invisible work Henry had done every day, translating the messy, real-world data of industrial supply into actionable logistics. Richard, who had spent his career managing spreadsheets and schmoozing executives, had no idea how complicated it actually was. Meanwhile, Henry was sitting in the sleek modern office of Titan Logistics, going through orientation with Stephen Wallace. The contrast between the two companies was striking. Ironclad was a company that promoted based on bloodlines. Titan promoted based on competence. "We've got a major push into the Southwest Territory this quarter," Stephen explained, projecting a map onto the wall screen. "We need to aggressively acquire market share. Ironclad has been dominant there, but from what I hear, they're about to experience some turbulence." Henry smiled. "Turbulence is an understatement. They are flying blind into a hurricane. By Friday, Copperfield Manufacturing is going to be looking for a new supplier. I can guarantee it." Stephen raised an eyebrow. "You sound very confident." "I know the Copperfield account inside and out," Henry said. "Their purchasing manager, Jennifer Reynolds, is notoriously impatient. If she doesn't get a concrete answer on her shipment by noon today, she's going to start shopping around. And Chloe Vance doesn't have the answers. Then we should be ready to catch them when they fall," Stephen said, tossing Henry a company smartphone. "Your first assignment is to draft a proposal for Copperfield. We're going to offer them a 5% discount on their current rates and guarantee delivery within 48 hours. Back at Ironclad, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. It was 11:30 a.m. and Jennifer Reynolds was on the phone, screaming at Chloe. "I don't want to hear about routing numbers, Chloe," Jennifer yelled, her voice echoing through the phone's speaker. "I want to know where my bearings are. Our production line shuts down in 4 hours if we don't have those parts. Do you understand how much money that costs us?" "I'm trying to locate them, Mrs. Reynolds," Chloe stammered, fighting back tears. "We are experiencing a slight delay in our Phoenix hub." "A slight delay," Jennifer interrupted. "Henry Gallagher never had a slight delay. He anticipated these things. Where is Henry?" "Henry is no longer with the company," Chloe admitted softly. There was a dead silence on the line. "You fired Henry?" "He resigned," Chloe clarified quickly. "But I assure you I am fully capable." "Transfer me to Richard Vance," Jennifer demanded. "Now." Chloe transferred the call. 2 minutes later, Richard stormed out of his office, his face red with fury. He marched over to Chloe's desk. "What did you say to Jennifer?" he hissed. "I just told her the truth." Chloe defended herself. "I told her the shipment was delayed and Henry was gone." "You never tell a client the truth when the truth makes us look incompetent," Richard snapped. "Now she's threatening to pull the account. You need to fix this, Chloe. Call the Phoenix vendor and get those bearings moving." "I don't know who to call," Chloe yelled back, finally snapping under the pressure. "I don't know how any of this works. I've been here 3 months, Dad. You put me in charge of a multi-million-dollar logistics network, and I don't even know how to generate a basic manifest." The entire office went dead silent. Dozens of employees stopped typing and turned to watch the meltdown. Richard's face went from red to purple. His nepotism had been laid bare for the entire floor to see. "In my office now," Richard growled. Once the door was closed, Richard began pacing. "You are making me look like a fool out there. You made yourself look like a fool when you gave me a job I wasn't ready for." Chloe shot back. "Henry warned you. He tried to tell you how complex this division is. But you didn't listen because you wanted to play the big-shot CEO and hand me a vanity title. I gave you an opportunity. You gave me a nightmare. I'm drowning, Dad." The Warren Act compliance issue? It turns out Henry was managing a slow transition of warehouse staff to avoid triggering a mass layoff notification. Because I didn't follow his undocumented schedule, we just accidentally fired 50 people on the same day. We are in violation of federal labor laws. The Department of Labor is going to fine us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Richard froze. "What?" "And that's not all," Chloe continued, pulling a stack of papers from her folder. "To try and expedite the Copperfield shipment, I signed off on a vendor agreement with a new supplier in Nevada. I didn't read the fine print. They are using a patented sorting algorithm that we are now legally liable for under 35 USC. Section 271 for patent infringement. We don't have the license to use their proprietary system in our network. We are looking at a massive lawsuit if the patent holder finds out. Richard sank into his leather chair, the color draining from his face. In less than 40 since Henry's departure, the regional division had violated federal labor laws, committed patent infringement, and alienated their second-largest client. "We need Henry back," Richard whispered. "He's gone, Dad. He's working for Titan Logistics." Richard's head snapped up. "Titan? He went to our biggest competitor? And he's probably taking our clients with him," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Richard grabbed his phone and dialed Henry's number. It went straight to voicemail. He dialed again. Nothing. He slammed the phone down on the desk. "He set us up. He knew this would happen. He planned this. He didn't plan anything," Chloe said softly, the realization dawning on her. "He just stopped protecting us from our own incompetence." By Wednesday, the bleeding had become a hemorrhage. Jennifer Reynolds officially terminated the Copperfield account, citing breach of contract due to failure to deliver critical components. Within an hour of that termination, she had signed a new contract with Titan Logistics, negotiated directly by Henry Gallagher. When the news reached Charles Higgins, the corporate overlord and Richard's boss in Chicago, the reaction was swift and brutal. Charles flew down to the regional office on Thursday morning. He was a man who did not tolerate failure, and losing the Copperfield account was a catastrophic failure. Charles bypassed Richard's office entirely and called an emergency meeting in the main conference room. Richard and Chloe sat at the table, looking like condemned prisoners awaiting execution. "Let me make sure I understand the situation," Charles began, his voice dangerously quiet. "In the span of 1 week, we have lost our most experienced operations director, lost our second-largest client to our direct competitor, violated the Warren Act, and potentially exposed the company to a massive patent infringement lawsuit." Richard cleared his throat. "Charles, I can explain." Henry Gallagher was disgruntled. He sabotaged the transition and stole proprietary client relationships. Client relationships are not proprietary unless there's a non-compete, which you failed to secure, Charles shot back. And from what I've gathered by looking at the logs, Henry didn't sabotage anything. He simply stopped doing the jobs of 3 people. Charles turned his cold gaze toward Chloe. "Miss Vance, what is your assessment of the situation?" Chloe took a deep breath. She had spent the last 3 days trying to fix the mess, and she was exhausted. "My assessment is that I am completely unqualified for this position. I was given a title without the necessary experience, and it has cost this company millions of dollars." Richard looked at his daughter in shock. "Chloe, what are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth, Dad," she said, turning to him. "Because if I don't, I'm going to end up in jail for corporate negligence." Charles leaned back in his chair, a grim smile playing on his lips. "At least someone in this room has a shred of accountability. Richard, your actions constitute a severe breach of fiduciary duty. You promoted an unqualified family member to a critical role, ignored the warnings of your senior staff, and jeopardized the financial stability of this division. Charles, I've given 20 years to this company, and you've undone 20 years of goodwill in less than a week," Charles interrupted. "Effective immediately, you are terminated for cause. You will clear out your desk by noon." Richard sat stunned, the reality of his downfall crashing over him. He had thought he was untouchable. He thought his position shielded him from consequences. He was wrong. Charles turned back to Chloe. "As for you, Miss Vance, you have 2 options. I can accept your resignation, or I can demote you to an entry-level logistics coordinator. You will report to the new regional director, whoever that may be, and you will learn this business from the ground up." Chloe didn't hesitate. "I'll take the demotion. I want to learn how to do this right." Charles nodded curtly. "Good. Now get back to work. We have a lot of fires to put out." As Richard packed his boxes under the watchful eye of corporate security, the office hummed with a different kind of energy. The tension was gone, replaced by a grim determination to survive the crisis. Henry had been the glue holding the division together, and without him, it had shattered. Now, they had to pick up the pieces. The situation at Ironclad Manufacturing continued to spiral long after Richard Vance was escorted out of the building. The damage he had caused went far deeper than losing a few clients. The legal ramifications of his nepotism and Chloe's desperate attempts to keep the logistics network running were staggering. The Warren Act violation alone triggered a massive investigation by the Department of Labor. Because Chloe had accidentally fired 50 warehouse workers without the required 60-day notice, Ironclad was suddenly liable for back pay, benefits, and severe civil penalties. The company's legal team scrambled to contain the fallout, but the evidence was irrefutable. Richard had bypassed standard HR protocols to put his daughter in charge, and her lack of experience had directly led to federal labor law violations. The board of directors was furious. They launched an internal audit that revealed years of Richard's mismanagement, all hidden behind Henry Gallagher's flawless operational execution. But the real nightmare was the patent infringement. The Nevada supplier Chloe had haphazardly contracted with was using a proprietary routing algorithm protected under 35 U.S.C. Section 271. When the patent holder discovered that Ironclad was utilizing their technology without a licensing agreement, they didn't just send a cease and desist letter. They filed a massive federal lawsuit seeking treble damages for willful infringement. Ironclad's general counsel had a complete meltdown. They realized that Chloe, in her frantic effort to expedite the Copperfield shipment, had signed an agreement that indemnified the supplier, leaving Ironclad entirely responsible for the patent violation. This was a classic case of corporate negligence. A 23-year-old with 3 months of experience had bound a multi-million-dollar corporation to terms she didn't understand. To compound the disaster, rumors started circulating that Richard Vance had attempted to forge Henry's signature on some of the transition documents to make it look like Henry had approved the new vendor contracts before his departure. If proven, this would constitute forgery under California Penal Code Section 470, elevating Richard's civil liability to potential criminal charges. The sheer audacity of the cover-up was mind-boggling. Richard had believed he could sacrifice Henry to save his own career and protect his daughter, but the immutable digital trails of modern corporate software made that impossible. Every login, every keystroke, every document modification was time-stamped. The forensic accountants brought in by the board easily proved that Henry was not logged into the system when the crucial approvals were made. The board, facing a shareholder revolt over the collapsing stock price and the impending lawsuits, had no choice but to pursue legal action against Richard Vance for breach of fiduciary duty. He had prioritized his family over the company, neglected his managerial responsibilities, and exposed the corporation to catastrophic risk. Richard, once a powerful vice president, was now facing financial ruin. His golden parachute was revoked, his stock options were frozen, and he was spending his days in endless depositions trying to defend the indefensible. Meanwhile, at Titan Logistics, Henry Gallagher was thriving. His transition had been seamless. He brought over not just Copperfield Manufacturing, but 3 other major clients who had grown tired of Ironclad's sudden descent into chaos. Stephen Wallace was thrilled. Henry was given the resources and the respect he had always deserved. He rebuilt his logistics networks, optimized Titan's supply chains, and finally secured the financial stability he needed for his daughter Lily's future. He no longer had to work weekends to cover for incompetent leadership. He was recognized for his expertise, not his willingness to quietly clean up other people's messes. The contrast between the two companies was a stark lesson in corporate governance. Ironclad had valued nepotism and superficial credentials. Titan valued experience and actual competence. The results spoke for themselves. 6 months after Henry's resignation, Ironclad Manufacturing was forced to settle the patent infringement lawsuit for millions, crippling their quarterly earnings. They were still entangled in the Department of Labor investigation, and their regional market share had plummeted. Chloe Vance, to her credit, had stuck it out as an entry-level coordinator, quietly learning the ropes and trying to atone for the disaster she had unwittingly caused. She eventually came to realize that Henry hadn't sabotaged them. He had simply been the load-bearing pillar that kept the entire structure from collapsing. Years later, Henry would occasionally reflect on that fateful meeting in the conference room. He remembered Richard's smug face, Chloe's unearned confidence, and his own sudden clarity. He had spent 5 years being told to wait, being told to be patient, being told that his hard work would eventually pay off. He had learned the hard way that loyalty to a company that doesn't respect you is just self-sabotage. True power belongs to those who build and maintain the systems, the people whose expertise is invisible until it's gone. When he finally stood up and walked away, he didn't just save his career. He forced a reckoning. He proved that you can't manage a complex reality with arrogance and nepotism. The people who tell you to know your place are often the ones who have no idea how the machine actually works. And sometimes, the most profound revenge is simply letting them figure it out for themselves. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards. Henry's success at Titan Logistics continued to grow. He optimized routes, negotiated better rates with carriers, and built a team of dedicated professionals who respected his leadership. He was finally in a place where his 15 years of hard-won knowledge were valued. The sting of Richard Vance's betrayal faded, replaced by the satisfaction of building something truly functional. He watched from afar as Ironclad struggled to regain its footing, a cautionary tale of what happens when leadership prioritizes ego over expertise. The industry learned a valuable lesson. You cannot fake competence in logistics. The supply chain demands precision, experience, and an unwavering commitment to operational excellence. Henry had those qualities in spades, and Titan Logistics reaped the rewards.